I am José Andrés Posada. I am environmental engineer and magister student of the University of Antioquia. Today I'm going to present the main results of my magister research, which titled Evaluating the Capability of the World Model to Perform Dynamical Downscaling During Critical Periods to Water Availability to the Tropical Andes. This work was directed by Juan Fernando Salazar and Juan Camilo Villegas, University of Antioquia professors, and it was advised by Angela Maria Rendon, University of Antioquia professor, and Jofrey Mejia, University of Rio professor. Okay, one of the main challenges of the climate modeling, both global and regional, lies in the adequate representation of phenomena that bring temporal variability in the climate, a sensor or El Niño southern oscillation. In Colombia, rain reductions generated by El Niño can affect human supply, hydropower generation, ecosystem functioning, among others. In this context, observation and modeling of precipitation are crucial to the water resources management as potential sources of information. For this, in this work, we evaluate the capability of the world model to perform dynamical downscaling of the era interview analysis to the northwest of South America, focusing on the reservoir region of Antioquia, a region of the high hydro importance to the country, and during the most critical period in terms of the water scarcity, the dry season of the El Niño years. Well, the analysis was focused on precipitation due to its importance to the water resources management and its relationship with El Enso in the region of study. The methodology employed in this research was focusing on responding three questions. The central question, or first question, was this: does work provide added value to the era entering information? But to answer this question, first we had to quantify the era entering performance in relation to observation that correspond to this question, and next the world model performance using initial and boundary condition from era entering was quantified, but finally both performance were compared to answer the first question. The interest period of this research was the dry season of El Niño years, occurred between 98 to 2012 years, and the dry season corresponds to the December to February trimester, and the El Niño years are presented in this table. Okay, the precipitation features analyzed were three. The first was the spatial distribution of seasonal mean precipitation to the northwest of South America, and the second, the spatial distribution of seasonal mean precipitation to the reservoir region of Antioquia, or SIA by its initial in Spanish, and the last precipitation feature analyzed was the daily evolution of precipitation in the reservoir region of Antioquia. Well, when I speak to the northwest of South America, I refer to this thinner line box that correspond to our inner nested domain of simulation, and the panel which has 10 kilometers of resolution, of grid size, I'm sorry. And the panel A shows the external domain used in this work, which has 30 kilometers of resolution. The panel B shows the zooming on the reservoir region of Antioquia, the thicker line box of the panel A, and the points show the location of the surface gauges used in this work. Well, this table presents the source of information used in this work. We use as initial and boundary condition the meteorological data from era entering. To the evaluation processes, we use three specialized sources of information. We use this product of three that is a combination of remote sensing and surface gauges, and we use two reconstruction that are CRU and GPCC, and furthermore we use 45 precipitation surface gauges located through the reservoir region of Antioquia and supplied by IDEAN. Okay, as to the model configuration, again we use the meteorological data from era entering update axis hours, and the sea surface temperature from era entering was updated axis hour too. Furthermore, we use the land cover classification by modis, and to capture the laser scale circulation, we use the spectral nudging without forcing the boundary layer. As to the physics parameterization, we use the World Single Moment 6 class as cloud microphysics scheme, and we use as land surface model, the NOMP model, and the planetary boundary layer scheme, we use the Mellor-Yamada-Yangic, and the radiation scheme, both short wave and long wave, we use the CAN model, and the surface layer, we use the similarity theory of Moninoboku, and due to the importance of the cumulus convection in tropical modeling, we tested 3 schemes that are Betz-Miller-Yangic, Cambridge, and Grell-Devengy-3. As to the simulation characteristics of these 3 possible configurations, Betz-Miller-Yangic, Cambridge, and Grell-Devengy, we simulated this trimester to the September to February, and this year that correspond to El Niño years, 2000 and 2010. Well, the first trimester was discarded as simulation spin-up, and the second trimester, the trimester of interest, was analyzed. In this step, we made a sensible analysis to the selection of this cumulus convection scheme. We inquired which of these cumulus convection scheme represents the precipitation features analyzed. This sensible analysis suggested that Cambridge is the better scheme to represent the majority of the precipitation features analyzed. Well, with this configuration, we simulated the next El Niño years, and in total, we made 7 simulations, 3 in the sensible analysis, and 4 in the simulating the others El Niño years. Well, let's see the main results of the research. Let's start with the first precipitation features analyzed. In this figure are presented the spatial distribution of the seasonal mean precipitation to the Northwest South America, to the dry season, December to February, and to the El Niño years mean, from era entering and from working fish, and their bias from the different sources of specialized information, CRU, GPCC, and TRIN, and the last column shows the sun in the reservoir region of Antioquia, and the points have their respective bias color. The calculated statistics suggested that the use of working freeze reduces the era entering error, but work doesn't achieve a good representation of the spatial pattern to the Northwest of South America as era entering, but the use of working freeze improves the representation of the spatial pattern, of the spatial variability, Let's continue with the second precipitation feature analysis. This Taylor diagram summarizes the capability of from era entering, this brown point, from working freeze, this pink point, and the specialized sources of observation in relation to this reference that correspond to our surface gauges information. Okay, this radial distance to this reference shows the error of this source of information, and given by these semicircles around the reference, these semicircles around 0 shows the representation, show the representation of the spatial variability is not is closer to this semicircular one is better the representation of the spatial variability, and these radiuses show the correlation coefficient or the spatial pattern of the representation of the spatial pattern. Then next of this explanation, we can see that the use of working fringe reduces the error from era entering and improves the representation of the spatial variability and the spatial pattern. Okay, let's continue with the last precipitation feature analyzed, that is the daily evolution of precipitation on the reservoir region of Antioquia. This black line shows the daily evolution of the surface gauges mean. This brown line shows the daily evolution of the spatial mean from era entering, and this pink line shows the working freeze daily evolution of the spatial mean to the reservoir region of Antioquia. We can see then that era entering doesn't capture the dry and wet days, while working freeze does it. If we can see the calculated statistics, we can conclude that the use of working freeze reduces the error, the temporal error, and captures better the temporal variability and evolution. Well, as to conclusion and discussion, through the work potential to perform dynamical downscaling, through the presentation, we can see that the use of work model could reduce the error present in era entering to the northwest of South America and the reservoir region of Antioquia. Working freeze doesn't achieve to capture the spatial pattern of the precipitation of the northwest of South America as good as era entering, but this conclusion is not clear because we think that our evaluation method could punish the finer work information in terms of the spatial correlation. Working freeze captures better the spatial pattern of precipitation in the reservoir region of Antioquia, and working freeze represents better the spatial variability of the northwest of South America and to the reservoir region of Antioquia. And finally, working freeze reduces the temporal error and captures better the narrating the daily evolution of the precipitation on the reservoir region of Antioquia. Well, we think that these improvements achieved by work, among other aspects, are related to the better representation of the Andes topography achieved by working freeze, achieved by work model, in comparison to this achieved by era entering. This figure shows the latitudinal mean topographic profiles to the reservoir region of Antioquia, the line brown from era entering, and the blue line from working freeze, and the black line from the National Geospatial Agency of the United States. Then we can see that era entering doesn't capture the Cauca-Rivet Valley, and this flaw in the representation of the Andes topography could lead to inadequate representation of the influence of the Andes topography on winds, and therefore on the orographic precipitation formation. Well, to finish, we think that our results constitute a useful tool to decision-making processes as potential sources of information and to resist the climate change effects on the water availability and ecosystem and their dynamics. This is all. Thanks.